All right. If you have joined our coaches calls in the past, you'll notice that this is a little bit different. We're doing this in webinar format rather than an open forum. So you'll notice your microphones are disabled, but we do encourage you to drop questions in the chat, and we will try to address them if we go, if we haven't covered it already. Um, Thanks, everyone. We invited everybody to this call, not just our coaches, as we wanted to give you kind of an overview of what to expect this season. There's a lot of information throughout the season. We thought, why don't we share it with everyone? If you're brand new to NICA, I think this will be a really great overview of some of the things you can prepare for as we go into our event season. For those of you who've been with us, it'll be a good refresher. I'm JJ Coelty. I am the North Conference Director, and I would like to introduce my colleague, Kim. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim, and I'm doing the South Conference.
Yeah, Kim is our South Conference Director. And so depending on which conference you're in, that's who you're going to talk to most often. Kim, let's go ahead to the next slide.
Do it.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what is NICA. You're probably familiar with what you see at practices, but what you may not know is that NICA is an United States organization that is the governing body for interscholastic mountain biking, specifically in the US. There are over 32 leagues, 32 of them in the United States, and recently NICA has expanded into Australia and is working on Canada. Kim, if you'll go into the next slide.
All right, but I do want to point out really quick that Indiana's tag is definitely over Illinois. So if you're not familiar with Midwest geography, Indiana's this one. Illinois, which is a new league, is this one.
It's not my graphic. Um, so 90,000 students have gone through NICA across the US, 24,000 registered on average on an annual basis. And so a large organization, and there's a lot of athletes even outside of Texas that are participating. Next slide. And in NICA, sometimes you will see that we might be a little bit different than other cycling organizations. You might also see that we are different than other youth sports organizations. And that's because we are driven by the mission of wanting to build strong minds, bodies, character, and community. That is our primary goal, and we do that through the sport of cycling. And I see in the comment we've got some people stuck in the waiting room, so I'm going to pause just for a minute and see if we can check that.
I'm looking.
We are not seeing anyone in the waiting room.
See anybody?
For whoever, Tasha, do you still have some folks in the waiting room?
Oh, there's one person. Tasha was in the reading.
Tasha, could you go ahead and send them the link
Yeah, they're
that
coming
you
in.
have?
Tasha, they're all coming in as Tasha, though. Which makes sense if she sent them there.
All right, thanks, Tasha. Kim, do you mind just checking Team Snap to make sure nobody else is stuck, not able to get in?
Yep.
Okay, so back to talking about the mission. I also want to talk about our values. The values is how we do what we do. So we focus on fun, inclusivity, equity, respect, and community. And if you see throughout the season, will they do it differently in this organization, or this is different than other sports? We always come back to our mission and values, and that's why we do things the way that we do them. Next slide, Kim. The other thing about NICA is we are run almost entirely by volunteers. Kim and I are the only two people that are paid a significant amount from NICA, and when I say significant, enough that it is our job. The other individuals that you will see on the race crew might take a small stipend to help cover their expenses, but they are not being compensated for their time. So we ask that as you're at the events and race weekends that you respect these teams and remember that they are volunteering their time because they do love this organization. Next slide. Our coaches are also volunteers. And so keep that in mind too as you're working with coaches, whether that's on your team or other teams. These are people who are doing this because they love it. And we ask that you treat them with respect and appreciate the time that they are giving. And so, what do we as an organization offer for your students? For your students, we are focused on whole athlete development. And so, you're going to see three core areas that we focus on. The top one is fundamentals. So, within the team environment, your students are learning the fundamentals of cycling. So, how to be safe on and off the bike, and hopefully turn into someone who has a lifelong love of cycling. We also offer adventure and experiential education. So, adventure, being outside, being on the bike, it's all about having a good time and enjoying yourself out in nature. And that's what we want students to experience. And then the third piece of that wheel is performance and actually offering an interscholastic sport. And so, Kim, if you'll go to the next slide, this looks different for different athletes, and that's okay. And that is by design. So, that may look like play and just getting out and enjoying being together and enjoying the NICA community. It may look like time on the trails, working on the trails in nature, or it could be athletes who go on to elite levels of cycling. We were pretty excited last year when First Cycling ranked their top 5 juniors in the United States. 2 of those kids were from Texas NICA. So even though we focus on fun and inclusivity, we also have highly competitive student athletes. And I think there's a place within all of these activities for any student, no matter what they are looking for. All right, next slide, Kim. And so you'll see us talk about different programs. Within the NICA programming, we offer several different programs. NICA Adventure, that's where we talk about games, playing games to learn skills. There's also our Adventure Challenge, which we'll talk about here in just a moment. And then our GRIT program, Girls Riding Together. GRIT is a space where we invite all of the women within the league, all the females in the league to come together and have some unique time so that they can enjoy the challenges that are unique to females in cycling and just enjoy some time together. You'll see those grit rides on race weekends, and we encourage moms and little sisters, big sisters, aunts to come join us for our grit activities. Team Trail Corps is the program where our athletes give back to the trails. Mountain biking is a unique sport, and it's one of the only sports where the people who are enjoying the sport are actually giving back to their arena or their place of play. So anytime we're working on the trails, that's part of Team Trail Corps program and giving those hours. And then NICA Racing and Central Regionals is what you're going to see the most at event weekends. It's probably what what people know NICA for the most, and it's that interscholastic competition. And for those of you who got to participate last year in our first ever Central Regionals, student athletes now have the opportunity to come together with students from 10 other states and compete at the next level. Next slide, Kim. All right, so this is our Adventure Challenge. If you're not familiar with the Adventure Challenge, it is an app-based challenge where students log in and complete different missions. It is a challenge against themselves. And so the missions range anywhere from riding your bike to being physically active, to thanking a crew member and thanking a volunteer. This is an opportunity for every athlete to get out there and challenge themselves to complete missions, get 1,000 points, and win a jersey, a challenge finisher's jersey for the season. Our coaches have ended up loving this. So if you're a licensed coach, you can also participate. We encourage you to have your athletes sign on and join the Adventure Challenge. Okay, next slide. As your students are working on the trail and giving back to the trail, make sure you're logging those hours and giving them to your coaches or logging them in Pit Zone for Team Trail Corps. At the end of the season, we do give out awards for student athletes who've logged the most Team Trail Corps hours. Next, Kim. All right, now what we're going to be talking about, because it's coming up in just a couple of weeks, is what our event weekends look like. and what you can expect when you show up to these event weekends. Here's the schedule. And with this, I'm actually going to hand it over to Kim to talk about event weekends.
Oh, yeah. So this is the first year where we are making an official split between North and South. We're really excited to try it out. But with that, we do ask for a little bit of grace and patience as we've built out an entirely second league trailer so that we can do this. And we've expanded that volunteer crew that JJ showed at the beginning. We've had to double that as well to be able to cover all of the spaces. Our goal with this is to hopefully reduce the time of travel that our families all have to get to the races. So, with that, you'll also notice a few new venues on our calendar. One of them is not new, but it's been 3-ish years since we've raced there. It's Bridgeport. Another one, Milliken Reserve, we raced at last year for the first year, but it was a mud fest and we didn't get the full taste of Milliken Reserve. Another new venue we're adding is Kerrville, and that one has some really neat features and a whole lot of camping, including, drumroll please, camp hookups like power and electricity. It's gonna be wild. And then, of course, we'll end our season, of course, but at our state championship race at Bluff Creek Ranch down in Warda. So mark those calendars. There's also this weather date. And I will tell you right now, if you've been in the league more than 1 year, save that date. There's a good chance we'll wind up using it.
Kim, will you talk a little bit about what would trigger us to reschedule a race
Oh,
for weather?
yes, that is an excellent question, JJ. So, for the most part, rain, too much rain is one of the biggest things that would force us to reschedule a race. But not just rain, we are also looking at lightning and thunderstorms. We can handle a little bit of wet. Um, as you've seen with Milliken Reserve, but the moment we have lightning entering our race, we have to start delaying our race every lightning strike that hits. Um, so we watch carefully. We try to make the call for a race weekend by Wednesday or Thursday of that week. We have a meteorologist who we work with that gives us as detailed and accurate of information as you could get anywhere. So we are working with a professional on that. Some other factors would include just wild card weather. 1 year, it was just way too cold. The high wasn't even going to reach above 40 degrees. And with us being a camping league, uh, that just wouldn't be a heck of a lot of fun for our volunteers and for a lot of our families. We did learn from regionals, though, that we can do a lot in the cold. We can huddle together and make some campfires and have a good time. But there are a few other extremes. Tornadoes, we haven't, knock on wood, had to worry about. And extreme wind is another one that we've come really, really close to. So there's quite a bit that we are looking at, but it does take quite a lot. If you've been around, we get very clever with our race courses on what we can do to try to still put on a race. Anything else, JJ, that you would add to that?
Nope, I think that's perfect. Thanks, Kim.
All right. Yeah. All right, which that takes us to our league handbook. Now, here's the deal. Every one of you who signed up in Pit Zone, if you're registered, you have checked a box that said you are familiar with this league handbook. That said, it's still a PDF that is buried on the internet, and we've tried our best this year to make sure that it is front and center. And this year it's been updated. This is a big change from 100 pages down to 32 pages, making it far more digestible and something you can actually get through. So you can find it right on our homepage at texasmtb.org. Get in there. It will answer so many more of your questions that you didn't even know you had as a question. Here's a couple updates and the chapters. Community conduct, it goes over eligibility, that's a word, eligibility and participation. Bike safety, like how big of tires do you have to use on your bike? Can I use drop bars in the race? I don't know if it actually covers that. It covers event rules, event production guidelines, and even guidance for sharing grievances. Okay, JJ, you want to take this slide though?
Yeah,
The
I'm
most
happy
common
to.
things we see that come up.
Yeah, so some of the common things we see and that we really hope you'll take some time to be familiar with. The handbook talks a lot about adult and student conduct. So it's how we expect people in our community to interact with each other, with our volunteers, and with our race officials. Really, at the end of the day, we want everyone to be a good sportsman, whether they're participating or just a spectator at our venue. A really important thing if you're new to NICA, only registered athletes and coaches can be on our course and only when it's open. So our courses do have certain times when they're open and closed. You'll find those on the event guide. And everybody has to have a race plate on their bike to be on the course. Another thing, what are pull times? So get in there and understand how long your athlete's categories are and what it means to be pulled. If an athlete is out there for too long, we don't want them to have a terrible experience. And so we will go ahead and pull them off the course. You can look in here to see how your student's category is determined. We get a lot of questions on how did my kiddo end up in the category they're in. Also, what are your equipment requirements and restrictions? We do have requirements on what your bike can be like, also what your helmets can be like. You should have gone through that with coaches and hopefully they'll look at it. But if you are to show up at a race and don't have the appropriate equipment, the student athlete may not be able to race. You can also find all about how our scoring and our points system work. We're not going to talk about that today, but it's all in the handbook. And then even like Kim said, what do you do when you have a question about something or you disagree with someone on the crew? All those things are spelled out in the handbook, plus a lot of other things. For the most part, I would say we find it to be pretty common sense as far as behaviors go, but there are some things that are specific to how we operate that you will only find in our handbook. Any questions on anything we've covered so far? You can drop them in the chat and we'll keep an eye on that.
Thanks, JJ. All right. Speaking of, new line is north of Temple.
So
All right.
actually, I see some stuff going on in the chat. The North and South Conference, you can actually find that on the website on Find Your Team. The best thing to do is go to the Find a Team page and see where your team sits. Essentially, if you are south of Waco, you are going to be in the South Conference. If you are north of Waco, you are going to be in the North Conference. But if you've got questions, go check that website.
Yeah, great question. Great question. All right, moving right along. So you have gotten yourself into Pit Zone. You are familiar with the league handbook. But do you have everything ready in Pit Zone? So this is where you want to log in if you're a parent or a guardian of a student athlete and make sure that that student athlete has a practice ready check mark. So there's a few extra steps at the end that sometimes people don't quite get to, whether it's fully filling out the waiver, whether it's paying the program fee at the end of checkout. But you definitely don't want to show up to race weekend and then realize, oh no, my student isn't actually registered. You can find Pit Zone. I have it bookmarked personally on my web browser. So it's also can be found from the texasmtb.org site, but it is a different URL than what you would normally go to for our specific league information. In that little box, there is also a race category labeled. You'll want to check and make sure that your student is in the appropriate category. Does your student know the expectations for their category? Your head coach or team director are the perfect people to talk to. It's highly based on amount of time that a student can complete laps in and the distance that your student can complete overall. So can they finish a one lap race or could they maybe do two laps this season? Or and then JV1 and varsity categories require special petitions to get into those. So talk to your head coach about that. We also, if you're brand new to the league, but even if you're just returning, we have a few what to expect guides that are available on our texasmtb.org site. The student guide is one of my favorites because it was put together by a student of the league, by students for students. And she really was thoughtful in collecting all of the information that a student might need to get ready for their first race. There's also a what to expect guide that is targeted more towards parents and families. And it goes through what a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday might look like, including having some of the gear you'll need for the race weekends. Oh, so those are our like what to expect guides. And then we have our event guides. And we used to, it's changed throughout the years. We used to call them the race flyer back in the day when they were literally a single piece of paper that was a flyer that you were expected to put up in a bike shop. Then they became our race pages as they became pages on the website. And now we've acknowledged, hey, we do so much more beyond just racing on our weekends that it needs a full event guide because we are sharing information about camping, venue fees. I'm going to go into what's on that event guide. So before the weekend, now, check your equipment. See if there's one of those gear guides that's on the what to expect page. And sign up to volunteer. Those are all found on the event guide. Circled it right here for you. There's quick links this year so that you can jump down the page to the specific information that you need. So let's say it's Sunday morning, you're rolling out of bed and you're about to race, but you need to know your staging time. You'll be able to go to the event guide, click on Sunday schedule, and it'll take you right to where you need to go. In the past, you've had to scroll down quite a ways to find that. Read the event guide for every single race. It's one of the most important things we could probably tell you on this call. Even though it looks like it's a template and it's the same, much of the details in that information change, like venue gate times or pre-ride times, for example. Gate hours. They're down in the venue and event info. Directions and parking. Some of our venues, they're at private ranches that are way out on gravel roads. So for example, at our Aloha at Troy, the first race of the season, if you come down 452 and there's any moisture at all on that road, you will get stuck. You'll be stuck. And every single year that there's moisture on that road, we tell people not to go down that road and we have to go and pull them out. This little paragraph right here, directions to the venue, can relieve so much stress if you read the event guide and find those little instructions. There's also a venue waiver on all of these pages. Here's the great thing about our venue waiver. Thing number one, it is different than the waivers that you're signing in pit zone. These are for our venues that we're attending. And what that means is that every single person in your car should be filling out this venue waiver, or you as a parent or guardian should be filling out that waiver with your student's name in there. Whether grandma or grandpa's coming, anybody who is entering the venue needs to sign it, but only once. It's good for the whole season. Another thing that people get caught up on every single year, venue fees. They're cash only, and mostly it's because these are collected by the landowners and land managers. And it is easiest at some of our places we don't have Wi-Fi, for example. So to make you all switch and have to remember, is this one, can I use a credit card? Can I use my phone or Apple Pay at this one? Or is this one cash only? It's easier for us to just say cash only across the board at all of our venues. And even some landowners prefer cash versus prefer taking a card. So it's cash only, and I know we're living in a cashless society where nobody has any around, but please make sure to share this. If you're on the call, make sure everybody on your team knows it because some of our venues are pretty far out there and it can be a bit of a hassle to have to go drive back into town and find an ATM to get some cash. Venue rules and camping. This is an example of something that changes at every race venue. For example, at Troy, this is the only venue this year, but no dogs are allowed, and that is a strict rule for this venue. Even the landowner takes their dog and has it boarded for the weekend. It's for the safety of everybody, and it is out of respect for the landowners. That's their rule. So we want to make sure that we're following it. And every year, somebody tries and they get sent away. So please share that one widely with your teams as well. All right, the event guide also has one of my favorite tools and one of the things that I think makes our races easier to navigate than a lot of races I've attended. It's our interactive venue map. So this is run through Google Maps, and you'll be able to click on this map. You can zoom in, slide around, and at all of our race venues, you should be able to follow the lines a bit to see, my venue check-in will be right here. You'll enter the venue, and there will usually be a big league tent with volunteers working the gate, and that's where they'll check your waiver and they'll take that venue entry fee. Once you've passed there, you get to go into the venue, find your team camping, and start having a fantastic weekend. Each team has its own traditions and ways that they set up. So it's important that you communicate with your head coach to see where they plan to be camping for the weekend, or whoever on your team gets there first. Usually they drop a pin in your equivalent of Team Snap or whatever your team communicates with. I do find that exploring this interactive map before the race can really help you get familiar, though. Okay, generators and recently added lights as a highly recommended piece. So, our venues, if you've never been to a NICA race before, they offer mixed use camping. And what I mean by that is that some people drive in RVs and camp in an RV. Some people have camper vans. Many people sleep in the back of their car. Some people sleep in tents. We have, and we're also all in pretty close proximity in just big open grassy fields for the most part. Because of that, we have instituted a generator rule that has been in place for a number of years now, and generators must be turned off between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And this is for the sake of your own team and everybody else around you trying to get a good night's sleep. Something that I've been asked to add this year was the camper lights. Apparently, quite a few people leave their camper lights on, and they can be pretty bright sometimes and shine into people's tents. This isn't something that's a rule that there's a penalty assigned to, but it is something that I'd like to empower you as as a big NICA family to look out for one another. You want your teammates to be getting a good night's sleep. You want your families to be getting a good night's sleep. You want your race crew to be getting a good night's sleep. So look out for one another. If you notice that a teammate is still running their generator after 10 o'clock, knock on their door and ask them to turn it off kindly. Um, if you notice some lights still on or shining into your tent, go ahead and get out and ask your teammates if they'll turn it off so you can get some better sleep. Now, we do recognize that sometimes it's really, really dang cold at race weekends and you just want to run the generator that you paid for. We do, for those instances, or you have medical needs and you need to run the generator overnight. Whatever the reason, we've always instituted what we call our generator zone. And those can be found on the map. They're often designated in purple, and they are also often the furthest away from the rest of our camping. So if you don't want to be near the generator zone, be pretty intentional. Maybe don't camp right here next to the generator zone, even though that is open camping for everybody. Just some things to think about as your team starts to figure out where to go. All right. Hammock camper here. That's good. All right. So what else is in that event guide? Saturdays, it has the full Saturday schedule of when the gates open, designated pre-ride times. It is very important that you only ride during your scheduled pre-ride time. This is for your own team's enjoyment of the trails. So during your pre-ride time, there shouldn't be people from other teams riding on the trail, clogging the trail, creating bottlenecks. During their pre-ride time, you shouldn't be on the trail making bottlenecks. We experienced this and the lack of pre-ride times at some other events where we're sitting at a spot for 45 minutes waiting to get to start our pre-ride. So these pre-ride times are pretty important. They're very intentional. There's a ton of math that actually goes into them so that we have a certain number of athletes on the trail per half hour. So listen to your coaches and please pay attention to those. Saturdays, we also have adventure games. These are some of the most fun activities, if you ask me, on a NICA weekend. Bike soccer, cross net. Goodness, I'm sure Kevin, our adventure coordinator, even has some more fresh ideas for this season. So check out the adventure tent. And on the event guide, we'll be having some specific times of when events will be open and happening. Our Grit Ride is also one of our most popular events that happens on Saturday. Last year, we had a Grit Ride that got over 100 women on our race course at the same time. It was amazing, and definitely check out the information on the Grit page. There's also a waiver because anybody, any female who's interested in trying the Grit Ride, even if you're not a registered NICA student athlete or coach, can sign this additional waiver and join in on that ride. It will be at 3 p.m. again this year. At our joint conference races, we are also bringing back that gear swap. So if you've got a closet of old cycling clothes that you have either grown out of or you just don't want to wear anymore, and you'd love for a student athlete or even a coach to take it off your hands, bring it to our gear swap. We prefer not to take spare. It's a clothing swap to be specific. Um, don't think we've added any like bike parts or anything to that yet. So think bike gloves, baggy bike shorts, jerseys, especially long sleeve jerseys. Some of our newer student athletes, um, they don't have a lot of that cold weather stuff. And finally, for Saturday, enjoy the community. Go meet people from other teams. Go meet other families. I think you'd find you have a ton in common. Don't be shy. That's one of the best things about the mountain biking community is it's just a giant happy family feeling community. All right. Sundays are for racing and for celebrating the racing. Here's another drum roll for you. Brrr. Midday podiums. You've been asking for it for years, and we are going to give it a try. So, 1:30 p.m. on Sunday, we are going to do our best. We're going to have high school podiums in the middle of the day so that some of our student athletes can get on the road and get home a little sooner. Here's the catch, though, for our midday podiums. We've historically not done it because if too many people leave, there's nobody around to help us clean up the infield after the end of the day podiums. So those middle school podiums, before we have them, we're still going to have the same policy where our home teams especially need to step up, help us get that infield cleaned up so we can get our podiums rolling. I'm excited about it. I think it's going to go over really well, and I actually think we'll get some more attendance at our podiums than what we see at the end of the day, and that'll make our high schoolers just feel even better for all of their accomplishments. Um, Sunday start and staging is also listed here. And we'll go over a little bit more about staging, but there's a staging time, a staging gate, and the race start time, as well as your laps. Here's your plate series and max race duration, which has always been published. It's not, or well, in the last 3 or so years. JJ mentioned poll times earlier, and this max race duration is an important component to that. So NICA races, we don't say every race is 15 miles long. We say our varsity men's race should not exceed an hour and 45 minutes. So no varsity student athlete should be on the course longer than an hour and 45 minutes. So that means if their last lap has not started by 10:18, they are not likely to make it back around and complete their race in an hour and 45 minutes. And in that case, we institute what we'll poll the rider. When a rider is polled, they still get their points as if they finished the race. It is not marked as a DNF, but they're pulled off the course so that we can continue sending our other categories out onto the course without running over the athletes that may still be lagging behind. So, that in mind, this last lap started by is at the discretion of the race director and chief referee for the weekend. And I say that because there are some nuances and factors that go into this exact time. But this should give you a pretty good idea and hopefully a better understanding of what we mean when we say pull time. So that said, that's Sunday and race day. And I don't see, oh gosh, Thredo, Indiana. I don't see any questions in the chat so far. All right, race plates are picked up at the very first race. Um, they're all organized in a packet that your head coach or team director, a coach, comes to the registration and volunteer tent and pick up. Each student gets a bike that goes on their handlebars of their plate, goes on their handlebars, and another plate that goes on their back. The plate with the transponder on it, that is what goes on the handlebars. And it's very important that that plate does not get crinkled or bent. And it's even more likely we see a plate not read well if it's pressed directly up against those handlebars. So we often recommend doing the twist ties of those plates up on the cables rather than yes, yeah, that came bold all of a sudden. Rather than tied directly to your handlebar. So something to think about. Students do use these plates all season long. So a best practice is at the end of your race or at the end of your race weekend, assign a coach on your team who is the keeper of your race plates. And that way, one human is always keeping the race plates, and you don't have this student over here who forgets to bring theirs and this student over there who forgets to bring theirs back. Highly recommend this because we do wind up giving out a lot of new race plates every race weekend, and it is a $10 charge to replace those plates. All right, call ups. Student athletes are lined up at the start of the race in an order that is predetermined by the league and the rules committee and their previous race results. So the call-ups are sent out to the head coaches typically Wednesday or Thursday before the race weekend. Um, and then the coaches take that information and often they pull out the athletes who are on their team, and they start organizing that information and saying, okay, my these are our student athletes. These are the gates that they need to stage at. This is their call-up number, and this is when they stage. And you'll see a lot of teams have whiteboards, or some teams write in marker on the van window, whatever it takes to have this nice clean list, so that when you, as a family member or as a student athlete, show up to your team's campsite, your coaches already know exactly what you're supposed to be writing on your arm. Why do you need to know this information and write it on your arm? Well, it's because to line up as many athletes as we have found that the call-up number rather than the race plate number is a much better system to help students get organized before they enter into the start gate. So there is a sort of pre-staging thing that happens. So there's your staging time. And your staging time is when this little gate opens and you get to walk up in between all that snow fencing, and now you're like at the start line. But just before then, in the minutes before, if you come up and you are call up number one for gate A, it makes the most sense for you to come and stand closest to gate A. And our volunteers, our staging managers and our staging volunteers will go, ah, yes, you're number one, stand near here. If you're number 42, it maybe doesn't make sense for you to be right up near the gate opening. You might stand a little further back, knowing, hey, I don't load until I'm the 42nd rider. And now, as you're standing around waiting, you can even start to talk with your other competitors and meet some new people, ask them what their call-up number is, and start to sort yourselves a little bit. We have amazing staging managers who do that with our athletes and make it a really fun time. But that is the reason behind writing your number on your arm, because race nerves are a real thing. And as students get closer, man, what was my call-up number? I have no idea what my call-up number was. So we have some Sharpies around and we get your call-up number on your arm. That was a long explanation, but it's one of the more important things to help have a really smooth Sunday morning and start to your race. All right. JJ, you ready for race etiquette?
Yeah, thank you, Kim. So there's a couple things that we want to share about how everyone should behave. So we have rules where athletes can get a penalty, but we also just have some etiquette that if you haven't been around bike racing or mountain bike racing, may not be normal or standard. So some etiquette to share with your athletes. At the start line, when athletes are coming into the staging area, we ask them to walk their bikes until the race official tells them to mount their bike. So they're going to walk into staging and stand with their bike until they're told otherwise. Um, and then when they do mount their bike, we're going to ask them to always keep one foot on the ground. So we don't do any track stands to start. We keep one foot on the ground and one foot on the pedal. And then this last one is really important. All athletes need to be listening to the chief official and who's at the start line, because that's when they're going to talk about what to expect, get them ready for the race. Anything that's changed in the field conditions, they might talk about that right there. So oftentimes our chief referee will have some very important information to share with athletes at that start line. And if they're not listening, then that is on them if they miss something in that. The same with staging. While they're at staging, if they're not listening and they miss their call up, they go to the back. So this is time for athletes to really be paying attention. Etiquette on the course. So on a NICA weekend, there's a lot of athletes on the race course at the same time. That also means there may be multiple categories on the course at the same time. So it is possible that your athlete could come up on a group of riders that is from a category that's a little bit slower than them, or even riders from their own category if they've caught up to them. And we want our students to know the passing rules and understand that they can only pass when it's safe to do so. I would say one of the biggest issues we have on the course is athletes that don't understand passing etiquette. If you don't know what that is, please spend some time talking to your coaches about it, and they can talk to you about passing. We also expect our athletes to exhibit sportsmanlike conduct at all times. So what does that look like? That looks like when you're passing someone, you say, "Great job, thanks for letting me pass." It doesn't mean yelling and telling them to get out of the way. We know that sometimes race course can be intense, but we really do expect that our athletes and our parents are being good sports. If there is an issue with a bike, athletes should stop and move their bike off the trail and take care of any issues that they have off the trail so that they're not conducting the trail. And if they're walking, whether that's a feature or they're walking because they got a flat tire or they're just tired and want to walk, they do need to yield to athletes who are on the bike. Now, we also have some etiquette at the finish line. When we come across the finish line, we want athletes to have both wheels on the ground and at least one hand on the bars. You don't want to come in at the very last second and get so excited that that's where you have your crash. So wheels on the ground, hands on the bars. And then podium etiquette. When student athletes come up to the podium, we want them to wear their team attire. That could be a t-shirt, a cap, or their jersey. And we ask that they come up to the podium, just them, and not bring a bike or equipment or their furry friends with them when they come to the podium. All right, next. Spectator etiquette. This is also very important. So when you come to our events, you're a part of the NICA community, even if you're not a registered coach or a registered athlete. So we ask our spectators not to walk, run, or ride the course. You shouldn't be on the course at any point in time, even if that's just to jump up and take a picture of your athlete. Spectators should never be on the race course. The only exception to that is designated crossing areas, and then there will be a crossing guard that will tell you when it's safe to go across. You also shouldn't be running or riding alongside the course or alongside your student athletes while they are racing. We want you to cheer them on, but riding your bikes along the course is a hazard. You can run into some other spectators, so we ask that you not do that. Also, please do not give your athlete anything, food, water, a jacket, outside of the feed zone. So if they do take something from someone outside of that feed zone area, it is a penalty. Obviously, if there's an emergency, do what you need to do, but there is a designated place for feeding athletes and providing nutrition and water. If you're not sure what that is, talk to your coach and they can help you out there. Spectators and animals should not interfere with the race or racers in any way. Also, respect the officials and the volunteers at all times. So be polite to our course marshals, our volunteers, our race sweeps. Anyone exhibiting unsportsmanlike conduct, even as a spectator, we may ask you to leave the venue. And we haven't had to do this, and I hope we never do, but we just didn't want to point out that athletes and teams can be penalized for the behavior of the adults they bring with them. So keep that in mind. If you get really, really excited, don't yell at a NICA race the way you yell at your football team when they're losing. Next slide. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about results. So when possible, we will offer live race results at my.raceresults.com. You can always search Texas NICA and the event name, and you'll be able to find those results. When I say whenever possible, if we ever have Wi-Fi or connectivity issues, we may not be able to run live results, but we do that as often as we can. Live results are preliminary, so they're real-time running off the feed of the timing equipment. They may not include things like penalties, if a plate was missed by the transponders, or if we need to make adjustments otherwise. So keep that in mind when you're looking at them. We will post what's considered the official results near the registration tent as soon as possible after each race concludes. We will announce this to the coaches over the radios and over TeamSnap. And if you're a spectator, we will announce it from our announcers over the PA system. It's important that you look at this because once they're posted, you have an opportunity to look at them, and we have a 15-minute protest window where you can let us know if something looks off. Sometimes what may happen is a plate may not read, and if you're not looking at those race results, you may not realize that the rider's plate didn't read until it's too late. There also may be a penalty that was put on there that you have a question about. If you have a question, you can come to us and ask us, what is this for? If you truly want to protest, and so you think that something that the officials made a decision on was not correct, head coaches and team directors only can file a protest at the registration tent on behalf of the athletes. We ask if the coach or team director is a parent that they designate somebody else to do that for them. And then whoever is the head official at that race, it'll typically be myself or Kim, will come talk to you and determine the next steps on that protest. True protests are pretty unusual. Typically, it's just a question that somebody's asking. After that protest window closes, any protests are reviewed and decided upon, and then at that point, those results are considered final. I'll give you a couple of examples of times when we've heard from people after the fact, and at that point, it's too late to do anything about it. I'll get a call from a parent on a Tuesday after the race weekend and say, hey, my kid's race results aren't in there. Come to find out, they accidentally put their back plate on their front handlebars. And while we can go in and look up their time so they know how fast they were, at that point, it is too late to adjust those race results because we've already had podiums. So please take a moment to check, make sure your kiddo's results are in there and you feel they are accurate. All right, Kim, next. All right, and our event crew. At any point on the weekend, if you have questions, you should easily be able to find someone on the event crew. On Saturday, we wear our party shirts. So they're blue with bright colored flowers. You should be able to find us. On Sundays, we have bright blue shirts that say Texas Event Crew on the back. And when it's cold outside, we all have black jackets with our logo and say staff. Usually the best thing to do is going to be talk to your head coach because they are going to have information. More often than not, they will have the information you need. But if you're not able to get that from your head coach, find a member of the crew. And just remember that the vast majority of these folks are volunteers. If you're frustrated, come find me or Kim. All right. And then the last thing we will ask, every single race, it takes anywhere from 100 to 180 volunteers to put it on throughout the weekend. That's everything from race sweeps that ride behind our last athlete in each category to people to help us work the gate or work crossing guard stations. Please get on and volunteer when you can. We also have home teams assigned to one of the races that is the closest to you. And during those races, we ask that most of the volunteers come from those home teams. Those are weekends when you should have less travel and hopefully have more time to volunteer. So please get on those event pages and look for the volunteer links and volunteer to help us out. Yes, the South Metro Cyclones have been won the Team Volunteer Award 2 years in a row. They do a fantastic job. Last year, it came right down to the wire. So I think I would love to see somebody unseat them because that means we have lots of teams putting in lots of volunteer hours. Jamie and Brad may not be happy with me for saying that.
Oops.
All right, and coaches calls. So this is the only open forum webinar we are going to have like this for everyone. We will not do this before every race. However, the Monday before every race weekend, we do have a coach call where we go through important coach information just with your head coaches and team directors and anyone they consider part of their core coaching staff. However, if you want to get all the nitty gritty and all those details, we always post a recording of those calls on our website on the coaches tab, and anyone can go look at that. So if you're someone who likes all of those details, really wants to see what's going on for the weekend, all of that is available to you on the website. Kim, anything we missed that you thought of?
No, I don't think
All right.
so.
I
You
am
ready?
going to so right now we have it where you guys can't unmute yourselves. I'm actually going to turn that on now where you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question. We just ask that you raise your hand first or drop it in the chat. Any questions or comments? All right, I think we kept up with all the comments in the chat. I don't see or questions. I don't see any that weren't answered. Where can I sign my boy up? Are you looking to sign a kiddo up? Mateo, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute and tell us a little bit more about your question. Right, I'm going to drop in the chat an email address. If anybody has questions, they can send it to us afterwards. That is info@texasmtb.org. You can send us a note and we will be happy to answer that question for you. I'm going to stop the recording as this is the end of the call, but we will stay on for just a moment if anybody has a question they just now thought of.
Also, make sure to follow us on the YouTube and the Facebook and the Instagram.
Good call out, Kim.